Hello everyone and welcome to another installment of CCSD Insights News and Notes. I'm Andy Pruitt. In this edition, we will be talking about how we are planning to provide instruction for next school year when it comes to the in-person and virtual models. Joining me to discuss this topic is our district's Chief Academic Officer, Karolyn Belcher. Karolyn, thank you very much for joining us for this interview. Glad to have you aboard.
Thank you.
We know the message right now to our community is that we want everyone back in our schools next year for learning in person. More and more people are receiving the vaccine for COVID-19. The spread of the virus, for the most part in our community, is trending in the right direction. And the safety protocols that we have in place in our schools limit the spread of the virus compared to what you see in our community in general. But the goal is to try to return to something as normal as possible next school year. We still realize, though, that there are some students and families that may benefit from virtual or online learning, so we are in the stages of working on a virtual option for a limited number of CCSD students, correct?
That is correct. What's different is this year we had what we called the temporary virtual out of the school site. And next year we're not going to do that. We want all of our students to come back in person for face-to-face instruction because we know it's better academically. We saw that when we looked at our MAP results at the winter break. We saw a real discrepancy between our online learners and our in-person learners on average. And second, I think we want to really make sure that we're keeping kids safe, and we've been able to show, even with our current virus levels, and again, they're going in the right direction, that we can keep kids safe due to the hard work of the principals, teachers, and the students on wearing masks, staying 6 feet apart. We've had very limited spread in schools, so it's safe for kids to come back in and learn.
You alluded to it just a bit there. Can you explain the importance of of in-person learning and why it's so important? What some of our data did show when it comes to students who are learning in person?
That's right. For most students, in-person learning is just more effective. It gives an opportunity to obviously have a relationship with a teacher. Too much screen time can be hard to focus and stay online. And we saw, most importantly, differential achievement. So when we looked at our student achievement data, on average, our in-person learners were doing better at every grade level than our online learners.
Still, we are looking at a virtual option for next school year, and we understand that there are students and families where learning virtually may actually work better for those children and their families. If that's the case, who are we planning to offer this virtual option for? Who is going to be learning in our Central Virtual Academy next year?
That's right. I think we know that we have some students and their families who may still, for health reasons, want their child to learn from home. We know that kids can't have the vaccine necessarily yet, and so given that, we want to make sure that we have an accommodation that is appropriate for those families and an option for them to learn at home. And then we saw some kids who really thrived with virtual instruction. They liked the ability to take some of their coursework when they were ready to. They're very good at self-managing their own time, and they're good about building their own relationships and connections with adults and other kids outside of the virtual platform, so their social emotional needs were met different ways. So we want to make sure that for those kids who it was a really good fit, that we also have an option for them.
So what will instruction look like? Will it be live instruction, back and forth dialogue between teacher and student, or is it going to be tape content and the students can go at their own pace?
We're going to have a balance of both, actually, what we call synchronous, where there's a teacher who's live, where the student can ask questions, and essentially is teaching through the medium of the computer. And then we'll have some asynchronous courses and practice for kids. It gives them a chance to do their own work at their own pace, sign in, sign out, take a break, but complete the work so the teacher can read that and provide feedback. And we just know it's hard for a student to stay in front of a computer for 6 hours a day, so we want to make sure there's breaks.
I know that these details are still being ironed out, but who will be teaching the students when it comes to the CCSD virtual option?
We're going to have fully certified teachers, and obviously those teachers who've been particularly effective over the last year in virtual instruction. We are going to have to adjust depending on the level of interest that we have based on families. So right now we're going to ask for all of our teachers to apply for those positions, but the teachers who are working in Virtual Academy will continue on in the district, and I suspect that many of them will continue to work within Virtual Academy next year.
So do we know how many students will be accepted into this virtual environment for next school year and how many students would be in a virtual classroom?
We don't as of yet, in part because we're not sure of the level of family interest that we're going to see, and that could vary by grade level, so we want to make sure we have a good sense based on the level of applications. And we generally are anticipating that class sizes would be larger in a virtual environment because, again, there can be times for kids to go and work independently and times for kids to get individual instruction, and we've seen that that works well within our Central Virtual Academy now.
Is the curriculum going to be purchased through a platform like Virtual SC or Florida Virtual, or is the curriculum going to come from our district?
It probably will vary a bit depending on what we're talking about. So for many years prior to COVID, our 9th through 12th graders were completing courses that we purchased or designed ourselves that aligned to the state standards. So we used SC Virtual, our own CCSD Online, or Edgenuity courses. Those are still going to be available to our high school students, and we developed some courses in collaboration with some of our nearby districts, which will also be available to high school students as they select their own instructional program. For our K-8 students, we've primarily used Florida Virtual over the last year, and that's our starting point going into this next year. But we want to make sure that we're looking at what other districts have done and learning from them, and we've supplemented that Florida Virtual coursework with our own curriculum like Bridges or Illustrative Math, and that will continue in the new year.
I think another important point to make for our families is the commitment, time commitment. For the most part this year at the middle and elementary school level, we had asked them to do quarter to quarter in the first semester and then the full second semester. And then at the high school level, it was semester by semester. What do you anticipate the commitments looking like for next school year when it comes to this online learning platform?
Yes, in general, we are asking for families to stay for a full year, although a semester is sufficient. I think our expectation is there's going to be less change than we had this year, so we were unsure of where the virus levels would be and wanted families to have the flexibility depending on where our community was. We know going into next year that we can keep kids safe in person, and we know that it's better academically, so our suspicion is those families who are making the decision to go virtual, that's either an exceptionally good fit for the family and the child, or they need that considering that COVID may still be a risk for them and their family.
Another important question, I think, and I know that's still being ironed out, but as far as the timeline for students and their families when it comes to applying to be a part of this virtual option for next year, what are we looking at?
We're going to release information about the Virtual Academy and have facts and other information online beginning this week, and that will include a link to the application. And it is an application. We don't want to keep surveying families like we did last year. We want to get all the relevant data right now, and it will give us a clear sense of what are the grade level needs, what are the rationale of why families are selecting, and to the extent that we can then adjust the scale to meet that need. Now, we also know that we may not be able to meet every need, and we would prefer that 95% or more are in person. So that's the other piece, is if virtual instruction was not a good fit for you and your family, then we discourage you from applying for that.
Karolyn, that's all I have. I know there's going to be more questions, but again, you alluded to that there will be more information on the website, so we do appreciate you providing answers to these big topics related to the virtual online platform for next year. Thank you for your time as well on this interview.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
All right. And that'll do it for this edition of CCSD Insights News and Notes. If you do want to learn more about the virtual option for our district for next school year, please go to ccsdschools.com. There will be links off the main page of the website. That's going to do it for this edition of CCSD Insights News and Notes. I'm Andy Pruitt. We'll see you next time.